Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coaching from the Couch. This is your Washington Commanders update, and I'm your host, Candi Seawall Waller, checking in as I love to do to give you all some exclusive insights and the latest and greatest information on the Washington Commanders. I know been a little bit since you've seen me bring all the collection of information together in one place to say, here's what's going on, here's my perspective, let me share it with you. But a shout out to everyone that's been locked in to Bowie Television, Verizon Channel 11, Comcast Xfinity Channel 77, and everyone that is subscribed to the YouTube channel. Because I know you all are watching the channel to get all of the highlights and all of the rest of the great content that Bowie Television has to offer. Now, this show is all about the Washington Commanders. There has been a lot that has happened since you all have seen me check in on the channel. We've been sharing all highlights of practices and games, but we haven't had an opportunity to really talk about all of the things. Now, have we, Commanders fans? So make sure you all are hitting that thumbs up. And make sure you all are sharing this show. You can absolutely share the show, you all. You can absolutely share it. Share the link. Share it with all of your Washington Commanders loving family and friends because we get down into the nitty gritty on this show. So, where should we even start? I guess since I've seen you all, and if you all are following me on X at Seawall SE, you see it here in the lower third. You've been keeping up with my posts. If you follow me on Facebook, you've been keeping up there as well on the happenings, all of the things. We have gone through two joint practices away, two preseason, not all of the preseason games, but two away, one at home. Now we are officially on the road to the initial 53 roster. Commanders head coach Dan Quinn has already let us know that things could change. Already seeing changes at kicker. Already seeing what could have been a shocker to some, the trade of wide receiver Jahan Dotson within the division to the Philadelphia Eagles. We definitely have a lot to discuss and just keep you all in the know of what's going on. Preseason game 3 at Commanders Field. The media had an opportunity to do a tour. So we definitely want to share some of the stadium renovations. The organization has already done a deep dive and going to continue to make updates to the fan experience. So we want to share some of that with you all as well. But with so much going on, I hope you all have some time because this is going to take us a minute to get through this right here. Now, as we get into this, you all will know or may remember that I'm going to be bringing up some old stuff. And here's why. Here is why. I want you all to get used to doing something called using your clues. I absolutely want you to get used to using your clues. When I bring up something, when I say, hey, pay attention to this, I think this is a very important point. Trust me on that. It is a very important point. And I'm going to get to that more in a moment. So I'm going to be replaying some of the press conferences so that we can really do another deep dive into here's some of the things as we are now moving into the regular season. I want to bring up some things that I saw that could be red flags or yellow flag, since we want to keep it about NFL football. And then we're just going to move on to some of the things that have happened and have transpired. And I have an opportunity to share my thoughts with you all. Now, we may be talking a lot because we got to come back to talk about the initial 53. And there's going to be a lot of movement this week, you all. So let's go ahead and just dive in. Why don't we? I want to remind you all that I asked head coach Dan Quinn about penalties early on in training camp. Here's a reminder. Check it out. Coach, we've seen a couple of flags, maybe a few get thrown here and there. So, what's the kind of learning process of why that flag was thrown and just the overall one-on-one touch base with that player?
Yeah, and I think what you want, Candi, is to avoid pre-snap and the post-snap, because those can really come down to discipline. A post-snap of a poise or a pre-snap of an offsides or a false start. If there's a combative penalty, then you can coach from that and teach from that. It's holding or hands to the face or PI or, whatever that might have looked like. So it's the combative ones that we want thrown to see where we go. The ones that are lack of discipline mistakes, those are the ones we know we have to get rid of our game, a false start, a jumping off sides. And so those ones can really hurt you. So knowing the two different types of penalties to go, we understand the combative ones will happen, but the ones pre-snap and post-snap, those are the ones that just can't be part of what we do. All right, thanks, guys. Looking forward to seeing everybody. All right, let's get it. Coach from that.
So we know that throughout the preseason, we saw some penalties. Those pre-snap, post-snap, hey. So I'm going to keep mentioning that. I'm going to keep mentioning that because that is something that just will absolutely crush a momentum of a play. I really appreciated Coach Quinn explaining that as thoroughly as he did, but I thought it was an important point to bring it back up in this discussion because that was something that we saw during preseason. It was something that I asked about, and hopefully this is something that they'll continue to work on. Yes, we know that these things sometimes happen. However, if it's happening too much, and you've already heard head coach Dan Quinn say, cannot happen, let's definitely try to see what goes on with that. I also have to say, the combative ones, I know he mentioned that those are some of the things that you can teach. I also would like to see a little bit of that, go down. Didn't see as much, but we do know it's preseason. So let's continue on tracking that. Now, you all are probably like, what does Seawall really think about the Jahan Dotson trade to the Philadelphia Eagles? If you all watched Locked On Commanders with my Commanders media colleague, David Harrison, you know that I was a guest on his show to talk about that trade. You also know by now, hopefully, if you're following me at Seawall SE, if you're following me on Facebook, that I have been bringing this up, that there's a problem at wide receiver. There's something going on here, everybody. And I started to really share that with my colleagues and with you all as well, using of the clues. I think it's important to remind you all what were the clues that I used. And I can also share with you in a very transparent way, because that's what we try to do here. What was it at practice that made me say, you know what? Something just doesn't feel right here. So let me remind you all, after the first day of pads, when I asked head coach Dan Quinn about the wide receivers. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning.
Can you share a bit about what you're seeing so far from the wide receivers?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. And specifically yesterday, we've been working hard at when the second play begins, a quarterback's outside the pocket to go. And one player specifically caught my eye yesterday was Diami. And when that second play happens, how hard you have to run to go and make that next play, knowing it may not come to you, but over and over and over again, Candi, to have that kind of speed to go, that really impressed me with Diami yesterday. So we're tracking everybody, how many targets, how many plays, and the more we get into practice, the more competitions. As we get later into camp, you'll see some one-on-one. So all of this is part of that ramp up to do that. And but yesterday, that was one of the things I was impressed on scramble plays when the quarterback gets outside the pocket. The speed for him to extend and make another play, and that's what makes challenges the defense when you have to defend two plays like that.
So head coach Dan Quinn was really clear. And if you're listening, right, you're like, he's sharing with us what he wants to see out of that position. Of course, a huge takeaway was that he mentioned Diami after the first day of pads, right? Of course. But then he goes on to really explain what he was looking for in what he's really looking for out of that position. So if we take into consideration from that point, which was that was then the after the first day of pads, then what I was starting to watch, because I watch every position group as much as you can because there's a lot going on at practice. And then I said, I think I want to zoom in a bit more on the wide receivers, see what's going on over here. And Coach Cliff Kingsbury, which I'm going to pull up what I asked him then, and I replayed this for you all on the last episode, the last episode of the conversation part of this, right? Of just the comfortability of Jahan. It just didn't feel like he ever got comfortable. Now, listen, when all of the changes were initially made, all of the things, right? We know Jahan did his media scrum and he talked about Jayden Daniels being the quarterback that he wanted. We also found out that he works out with Jayden Daniels in the offseason. They were not new to one another. They knew one another with Jayden coming in. You know, Jahan mentioned he feeling like that he had been traded, because the team was so different. And it felt like he was comfortable. Like this was going to really be an environment where he could embrace the competitive spirit as well as be able to do what we all saw him do in his rookie season. But it still didn't feel like he was that comfortable at all. So I said, once the offensive coordinators are able to speak, why don't I leverage that opportunity to ask offensive coordinator Kingsbury directly his perspective and what his thoughts were so far on Jahan Dotson. So let me bring this back to you all's memory. Coach, going back to the wide receiver group for a moment, what are you seeing out of Jahan Dotson?
He has tremendous ball skills. He's played in a couple different systems, since he's gotten to the league. And I think once he gets comfortable with us, whether it's inside, outside, I think you're going to see him just really take off. He had a great catch today. But the one thing I like about him is when you challenge him and you ask him to compete, he's going to go and he's going to compete his tail off and make the plays. And so been really happy with what I've seen from him. I love his competitive nature, and I think he's just going to continue to get better. I can tell him and Jayden have a good rapport, which is encouraging.
That point about the comfortability, he says it there. Now, for myself, going back to use your clues, I'm like, comfortability, but he's worked out with Jayden before in the offseason. We're in August, and there's still a conversation around comfortability. Okay. Then the last sentence that Coach used, which is, again, around Jayden, he has the rapport. So he's saying it out loud. He has the rapport with Jayden. That's encouraging. And it's like, so you already know then it's still not that spark, that it factor, right? And here's the thing. When folks get traded, clearly it's not because they're bad. There's value there, right? If another team wanted them and gave something in exchange, then obviously there is value there. So okay, everything that Coach Kingsbury said about Jahan is true. Tremendous ball skills, all of the things. But we've heard a consistent theme from the moment General Manager Adam Peters and Head Coach Dan Quinn have been like one, right? And that message around competitive nature and just wanting guys to compete relentlessly. And maybe this just wasn't the culture and the environment for Jahan. Now, if we go back to then going into that week, right, there's joint practices against the Jets, the first preseason game where Jahan saw the most snaps of any receiver. He had one more snap than rookie wide receiver Luke McCaffrey. Then we jump back to going into, continuing to replay in our minds what happened and using our clues, you go, continue on, right? Joint practices against the Dolphins. As Coach Keith, I remember that practice vividly. Jahan did have a great catch that day, but it wasn't necessarily a consistent performance. And that's another thing. They're talking about competition, competing relentlessly. The organization is also looking for consistency in performance, and that consistency wasn't there at the time, right? In Jahan Dotson, you all may have seen me post about this, where I shared that Jahan Dotson shared with the media during his scrum that he was trying to get his confidence back. He's watching college film. He's trying to get this confidence back. And it's like, okay. So there is a comfortability thing there because he's trying to find that spark again. Once folks start calling the team and asking, found a good deal, they went with it. Now, here's what I'll say in terms of movement overall. There's been a lot of shift and change with this staff. And I think Coach Quinn, I think I may share a clip later on, he's been clear that there'll be more changes. Well, but that's what change is, right? So I think what probably got folks, and I've had to even reflect on this for a moment myself, right? Man, you would trade Jahan within the division? Now, let's stay here for a moment, because I know that bothers a lot of people. It bothered me when it first, Jahan, I think so highly of Jahan. I really, really, really do. And it's been just a joy and a blessing to be able to cover him while he was a Commander. And I'm sure we'll be tracking him since he's still within the NFC East. But we're still learning about Adam Peters. We're still learning about head coach Dan Quinn. And I said to myself, in using my clues, because I'm not going to share and tell you all a game that I don't play. So when I share use your clues, guess what? I'm using my clues as well. So if I'm using my clues, I'm like, Adam Peters is excellent at talent evaluation. Historically. Now, we'll see what he does here. Is his first role as being the general manager, not the assistant, not a scout, but he's remarkable career and been highly successful. Yes, there's been some blunders, but guess what? Those blunders don't keep him down. He recovers. He keep on moving, right? Mm-hmm. Dan Quinn, players love playing for Dan Quinn. So I said, what is the message that they're really trying to say here? If they would trade Jahan Dotson to a team as competitive as the Philadelphia Eagles, what then does that mean? And what did they just share? What did they just say to everybody? I think what they just shared and said to everyone, and it gives me a cause to pause, if you will, to say, what are we really saying? What message are we sending if Jahan Dotson is still within the division? If I'm Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and I say we, not we is in the them, if they're talking, okay, what message does it send? Does it send any message? Do they even care? Is it a thing to at their level? And again, we're still getting ready and still understanding how they are and learning a bit about their personalities. At least I am. Using my clues again, folks. Does it matter that Jahan was traded within the division? See him 2 times a year. If it doesn't matter, then why doesn't it matter? And I said, the only way, if I'm just using my clues, if you feel like you can trade a person within a division is because you feel like that person is not a threat. No one said that. I'm just using my clues. Of within the division, though, could just be a matter of this is the best deal we have. So this is what we're going with. It all remains to be seen. But I will say this. We all saw the Jahan Dotson from his rookie season. Was that the Jahan Dotson that I covered this summer? No. Do I believe that Jahan Dotson is still in there somewhere? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I also have to understand that we're in a different regime. It is a different culture. And they are always going to operate and do what they feel like is best for the team. I think we're all going to be learning what they mean by recalibrate. Because I'm just using my clues, but I don't think anybody is going out there saying, hey, we're going to lose this season. So everybody give us a break. Nah. Nope. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think they are really wanting to put the best out there that they have each and every single game day. So I know that stung Commanders fans trading Jahan Dotson to the Philadelphia Eagles, but let's just keep watching this story right here because the story doesn't end, in my opinion, if I'm using my clues, with just the trade. Right? There's a long story with this. What do you do with the draft picks that you acquired from the Jahan Dotson trade? What Jahan Dotson does, against Washington as a Philadelphia Eagle. What does the Washington secondary do? How does that play into a factor? It's a lot of different story lines here that we're all going to be able to one day say, and this is all tied to that trade. So keep paying attention. I think it's a lot of important points there that certainly need to be continue to be just let's just keep using our clues on this one. How about that? Let's just keep using our clues on this one. Speaking of the secondary, I do want to go back to Dan Quinn when he was asked about the defensive backs. Check this out. Coach Quinn, speaking of Emmanuel Forbes, and I know you mentioned Mike Sanders still as well. What are you seeing out of your defensive back groups overall?
I think what we've seen, and from the safeties as well, we're talking about with Jeremy and moving guys into different spots. That's important. You've seen Mike probably yesterday. He was playing outside. We also play him some in the nickel. And we're still in that fact-finding mission. Can he play outside? Can he play inside? And so those are the things that we look to. You've seen like Emmanuel returning on punts and same things with Jahan. So we're constantly pushing to find out what else is there. What else can we look for? And sometimes, Candi, you find like there's more there and you keep going, or, okay, we gave that a look. Let's go back to, plan A or plan B. So I've been pleased with the work on those guys. I'm looking forward to seeing them in the game. Looking forward to seeing them against some other receivers in different formats. So the next, like I said, 2 weeks are going to be fun because I like to see the different matchups and the different people, both at the Jets and at Miami. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And is there anything you absolutely do not want to see going into the first joint practice and first preseason game? So we do know that the first preseason game, he was a little bit more open, but we knew the answer was different going into the second preseason game, but we'll dig into that at another point in time. Coach Quinn talked about the punt return. So now we're going to go back into a use your clues mode. And I'm going to go back to the very first press conference to kick off training camp, where I asked Dan Quinn about that position, and he explained what he was looking for out of a kick returner and punt returner. Check it out. My next question is about special teams. We saw some variety in the kick return, punt return role during OTAs. What are the characteristics you're looking for in that particular role?
Yeah, I think right now I see them a little bit differently because punt return is pretty traditional in the way of catch, initial quickness to make one miss. So if somebody was coming to have the ability to make one go, that type of change of direction and hands to go. Oftentimes they're fielding everything above them and they have to make one miss to get 6 to 7 yards. That's a good return usually if I can make one go. On the kickoff return, I think it's going to be a little bit different because it may involve more true running skills, running back skills. And so time will tell, but I do feel like the two positions are different because in a punt return, I may just make one miss, who are the gunners usually outside, but literally anybody could be coming on the new way that kickoff and kickoff return is going. So that part I do feel is going to be different, but they may even have to be more adept at fielding a kick that comes and hits the ground first, as opposed to forever we've just seen kickoffs come from the air and we catch, we want to be on the move. There may be a player that has to play infield as well as outfield, and the shortstop and center field. And so that kick returner this year better be adept at both.
And so let me share with you all what he said recently about that position.
Dan, the wide receiver competition and also the returners, any more specific clarity for you or anything that stood out in those situations from the game?
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get a few more shots on the punt return, where we didn't into that spot. A couple we just, you don't get a chance to hit it. So I was wanting to see more there. We'll do some more of that this week, Ben, with Kaz, as one of the people back there. I've got great confidence in Jayden, like I said, where his return ability as a punt returner has been, it's easy to see that, whether through practice or the experiences on the game. And then Byron Pringle is somebody, that has shown demonstrated, explosive ability to go hit him. So we still have work to do into that. That'll carry over into this week and into the game. But as far as the returners go, not settled into that spot. So I like the candidates, but to say we're at the final set of that, not yet. Not yet.
So based on what you all saw, Commanders fans, go ahead and drop in the comments where you think the team is landed and have they even landed with who is going to take on that role. There's still a lot of discussion, right? They traded Jahan Dotson. That was something that I know initially, very the top of camp, I said, that could be a role for Jahan. And even when things weren't seeming like they were so settled, said maybe that could be something for Jahan. But we've seen Kaz Allen now struggle with that. Byron Pringle struggled a bit. So let's see what continues to happen if Jamison Crowder, who didn't play in the last preseason game, so maybe that's a sign he's safe. Maybe that is something that he will continue to do. But let's just keep a watch on that as the road to the initial 53, because that role, the kickoff return is different this season. The rules are different. And so you need someone explosive. And as you all have heard me say on this show, as well as on others, with the rookie quarterback, you want to put your team, rookie or not, you want to put the team in the best position to succeed offensively. And that always starts off with where they start in field position. And the return role is key in that for sure. Speaking of which, because you all know I just seem to always get the QB1 last, because I know that's always what everybody wants to talk about. And I do too, because it is truly an honor to be able to cover this team and QB1 Jayden Daniels. So let's jump to the clip where Dan Quinn makes the official announcement that Jayden Daniels is in fact the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders.
Excited about watching how he would, and the how has been absolutely outstanding. He went through the whole thing. He didn't miss a beat, hit the targets. that, we had put in front of him. We talked about the practices against the other teams, the games. So he's ready and he's earned the right to do that. He's really put in the work while being surrounded by some excellent teammates here. And in that case, I wanted to make sure I singled one of them out. In a perfect scenario, a young QB would, have a leader to also learn from, but perfect rarely happens. But we do have that in Marcus Mariota. And him sharing 9 years of gold with Jayden, I think, has been something that's really cool for us to see. Rookie QBs usually don't get that, and we do. And when QB rooms are special, that energy can be felt throughout an entire team, and we have that. So really cool to say. So apologies for having you come up with new storylines for today, but Jayden Daniels is our starting quarterback.
Well deserved. And was there any doubt? I mean, I guess for talking purposes, okay, we could do all the talk about that. But you all drop in the comments. What do you think about what you've seen so far in Jayden Daniels? Now, because this was a thing last week, I do think that I'm going to bring this up, but not until we talk about Jayden Daniels and just his overall feelings about being named QB1.
Did you pretend to act surprised when he told you?
If I didn't pretend, no, like I said, nothing's given in this world. So Marcus is a great vet for me, and for not even for me, but for Sam Hartman also. Man, he looks out for us. Everybody in that room looks out for each other. So, when they told me, I was really surprised. I didn't know what I was getting talked to about. I thought he was going to talk to me about my routine from this past game again. So it was a surprise to me.
Is there any part of you that where it is a relief just to get that out of the way and move on, just to, everybody knows? I mean, not that there was much doubt before, but just to hear it publicly, is that any sort of relief for you?
I mean, not really. It's like more excitement and joy. It wasn't like a relief, like, oh, okay, I'm going to still take the same approach every day to get better. And that's what we preach, especially in the quarterback room. We got to get better each and every day.
And I feel like we're seeing that in practice. I hope you all feel like you're seeing that in games. It's not going to be a lot. You're not going to see a whole lot in the preseason. And offensive coordinator Kingsbury told us that. Said, you're not going to see much. We're not going to give you what we're doing. So you have to wait until week 1 for all of that to really see what's happening here, which I think is an important point to mention, that now going forward, since training camp is over, the media is not allowed to stay for all of practice anymore, but only be like the first 20 or 30 minutes. But we won't be able to watch all of practice anymore. So they're saving all the good stuff. Trust me on that one. Now, we know there was a little bit of controversy, air quotes, about this here.
I hate to harp on the sliding thing, but I'm just curious, like, mechanically, do you actually practice sliding? Have you ever practiced sliding?
Nah, I haven't.
So I don't know if that was an issue for you all. I will tell you all, it is not an issue for me. And here's why.
He talked about wanting to make explosive plays with his legs. The coaches maybe want him to slide more. How much do you communicate about him protecting himself, and what's your degree of confidence he will?
He will. He will. He will. We've harped on it a lot. But, you love the competitive nature. It's just there's a time and a place for it. There's a situation for it, and there's a situation to play the next play. And what's awesome is having Marcus Mariota, who's with a similar talent with his legs coming in. And so he had to learn when to get down, when to surrender, when the party's over. And to have a guy like that with his knowledge helping Jayden through this deal has been really special for all of us, because I wasn't quite the runner those two were. So it's a little bit better advice coming from Marcus.
So that's why I'm not concerned. I'm like, hey, look. And we all know in any game, every defense is trying to get to the quarterback. And that is when we have to say, okay, what's this O line going to do? And what is Jayden going to be able to do in the moment in the face of adversity in this very fast paced NFL environment? So it remains to be seen. But do I think there's a cause for concern and to panic? No, I do not. So I thought it was important to address that because we're catching up, right? You all, we're catching up on all the things. We've been giving you all of the highlights and all of the cool stuff. So wanted to give you all that as well. End of last week, I asked head coach Dan Quinn about the current state of the team. We know that this time of year is tough for many, many players and their families. So I asked him about what is keeping him up at night based on the current state of the team.
Coach, today is the last day of training camp. So is
Pool
there,
party. All right.
so,
Yes.
so is there, it doesn't sound like it what I'm about to ask, but is there anything based on the current state of the team that is keeping you up at night right now? And if so, what are those things?
There's a lot, and I would say more of it is because of what's ahead, over the next 4 or 5 days. Huge decisions, for the team, for the franchise, for themselves. And so making sure we've been really thoughtful about that. But it is definitely the thing that keeps me up the most right now. The season's further away, and I just wanted to stay right here in the fight with everybody, finding those moments. What are we looking for in this game? And we've had plenty of those conversations to individual players to say, this is what we would like to see in this game Sunday night. And we're going to give you some calls and give you some plays to go do that. So that's what keeps me up because the connectivity of the team is what I'd hoped for, the work ethic, the mindset, to really go battle. I felt that come alive. So making sure all the pieces to the puzzle can really fit seamlessly in that 70-man roster.
And so when head coach Dan Quinn talks about the 70-man roster, he is talking about the 53 plus the practice squad. So players that get cut, if they're not picked up through the waiver wire by another team, they absolutely have the opportunity to get signed to the Commanders practice squad. So it kind of makes it not so like, but it's still a hard time of year for, like I said, players and their families and the organizations as well, the teams as well, because they build these relationships. If you all have been watching the games, you see the team being especially hype, especially after preseason game 3 where the team actually won. So you see them being especially hype and just being advocates for one another and acting like, they really, really are enjoying themselves. So still some questions, in my opinion, it's still questions on running back 3. Who's going to take on that dual role capacity of punt return, kick return? We know that another kicker was brought in. So far, so good for Cade York, and that was via trade. So that's just how dire you can tell a kicker was needed. We still have yet to see the offensive line all play together, the starters in healthy. So remains to be seen there. How long would Johnny Newton be out? How long would Jordan McGee be out? They are critical pieces to the defense that the team absolutely wants to see them be able to perform this year and make an impact this year. And thankfully, they will be able to. I think there's still questions around the secondary and cornerback. There's questions I know around tight end. Is the team going to keep 3 or keep 4? Haven't necessarily seen everything that you want to see out of Cole Turner. So what happens there? So this is a lot. And it's all going to start happening here very, very soon. And we are going to definitely be discussing that a bit more. So you'll be seeing me again. Now, let's go into the stadium renovations. I want to close out with the stadium renovations. We did have a press conference with majority owner of the Washington Commanders, Josh Harris. First things first, you all, he's already made it abundantly clear that the old name isn't coming back. So you all should stop asking about that. All right. Doesn't mean another name, but the old name is not. So I asked Mr. Harris about stadiums they've been looking at, what they find as best in class,
check out his response here. Are there any other organizations you're looking at across the sports world as kind of best in class or best practices that you all are leveraging?
Yeah, so every time we go to an NFL stadium or a new NBA stadium or a new, I went to Tottenham Stadium, which is, both, obviously a Premier League club and European football club, but also hosts NFL games. We are looking at everything that's going on there. And so I can assure you that when we build our new home, we will be availing ourselves of all the modern things that are going on. Like, for example, I visited SoFi. I make it my own business to walk around with the ownership group or with the CEO or with the facilities manager and hear everything that's going on, whether it be where the Clippers are playing, which is new, whether it's SoFi, whether it's the new Vegas stadium, even the Premier League club stadiums. And so there's a lot of knowledge out there. This is an area of a lot of technology in terms of premium. It's constantly changing in terms of Wi-Fi and electronics and, how to emphasize the game. And so we have a lot of decisions to make. And I can assure you that we're going to be really try to be as thoughtful as we can about it. And, of course, we're going to look at everything that's out there.
So let's get into some of the updates that have already been made, you all. So let's take a walk through. So there's already been updates made to the fan experience over at Commanders Field, a more seamless approach to security. The floor is typically slippery with all of just the heat, condensation, drinks spilling everywhere. So the floor is a bit more ridged. So it's a bit more of a grip there, which I think is cool if you're wearing slippery shoes. You all may have seen already just the drink mart. So when you walk in, you'll see the drink mart. It's a cashless venue, so you just go in, grab whichever beverages you want, and you can go from there without having to deal with all of that. You all are looking at now on the Joe Gibbs Club level. So they've given that a name. And they've had many of these, some of the pictures and just all of the art that's been around up on the club level as well. Here at the 1932 Club, it's a theater style premium club. They have individual suites as well. If you all recall, much of the team, or I think all of the business side of the Commanders, all moved to College Park. So they've now turned the former offices into suites. So some, like I said, individual suites, a theater style suite area as well. A lot of air. You all saw that view as well. Super nice. Definitely was able to try a variety of the concessions. Some have already been there. DMV crab rolls, the shrab rolls, macaroni and different types of macaroni and cheese type of dishes. Lots of good stuff. So we'll just keep looking through here. It's a lot of it's a lot more bright. And this is from downstairs in the tunnel area where you're seeing your world champs, all of your favorite Washington legends are on the wall. And this is the tunnel lounge, which you'll be able to see. It's right by the home team locker room. And you'll be able to see the players when they go out to the field and come back from the field. So all good things, good stuff, good stuff. So they're definitely making updates as they go. So we'll see what else happens. We shall see what else happens, everybody. So you all, it's been a minute, and I know that we're going to have even more things to discuss and talk about here soon with the initial 53. We know that teams across the NFL have already been making changes. So they have until Tuesday at, I believe, either 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern to make those updates. So I'll be back soon to talk through what that initial 53 looks like. Of course, they have to see who's available on the waiver wire. It's just a lot that really goes into this process. So, you all, thank you so much for hanging out as always. And make sure you are liking it, you are subscribed, and you are watching Bowie TV. I will be talking to you all again soon.